Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're diving into a topic that I know a lot of runners are curious about, strength training for middle and long distance runners.
Yeah, this is a question I get all the time.
I bet. It seems like there's this idea out there that lifting weights is just for sprinters or bodybuilders. Like, if you're in it for the long haul, you should just stick to logging miles.
Right, exactly. And honestly, this belief has been around for ages.
For good reason though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. You don't want to be lugging around a bunch of extra muscle weight when you're trying to run a marathon.
Well, that's the thing. It's not quite as simple as that.
Yeah.
Back in the day, like way back in the 40s, there was this researcher named Delorme who came up with this theory about a strength endurance continuum.
Okay, a continuum. What's that all about?
So basically, he said that high resistance, like lifting heavy weights for a few reps, that builds strength. And then low resistance with high reps, that's for endurance.
So like running lots of miles would be on the endurance end of the spectrum? Exactly. And for a while, people just kind of took that as gospel.
And rightfully so. I mean, it's based on like actual science, right?
It is. Delorme was on to something about the way muscles adapt. Endurance training makes those muscles super efficient at using oxygen, kind of like a well-oiled machine. But strength training, on the other hand, that's about increasing the force those muscles can generate. The problem is, well, things aren't always so black and white.
Right. Life is never as simple as we want it to be.
Tell me about it. And when it comes to running, sometimes too much of a good thing, even endurance training, can actually be a bad thing.
Whoa, okay. So you're saying that some runners might actually be overdoing it with all the endurance work.
It happens more often than you'd think.
Right.
And that's exactly where strength training can actually be the missing ingredient. It's like if you're already maxing out on endurance, your body might benefit way more from building some strength in the gym, not just pounding the pavement.
Okay, that's interesting. So instead of just more of the same, it's about adding something different to the mix.
Right. It's like adding spices to a recipe. A little bit of strength training can go a long way. Plus, there's actually newer research showing that resistance training can actually improve endurance.
Wait, seriously, how does that work? I thought lifting weights was all about like 1 rep max and all that.
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But basically, when your muscles are stronger, they don't have to work as hard to maintain a certain pace.
So it's like having a more powerful engine in your running car.
Exactly.
Okay, so maybe those weight room warriors are onto something after all. But this brings up a huge fear for a lot of runners, myself included, getting bulky. I don't want to look like a bodybuilder and feel like I'm carrying around extra weight when I run. Okay, so how do we avoid bulking up? Because I'm all for a more powerful stride, but I don't want to sacrifice my speed for it.
And you don't have to. That's the beauty of it. Remember how we were talking about that strength-endurance continuum?
Yeah, with like heavy lifting on one end and endurance training on the other.
Exactly. It's not just about picking a side. It's about finding the sweet spot for your specific running goals.
So where does that leave us middle and long distance runners?
Right in the middle. We need strength, but not necessarily bulk. Think lean and strong, not bulky.
Okay, so how do we do that? What kind of strength training should we be focusing on?
Well, it's all about working smarter, not just harder. For middle distance runners, you need a balance of strength and power, but without packing on tons of extra size. Think like explosive movements, plyometrics, things that build strength and speed.
Okay, so like box jumps and those kinds of things.
Exactly. And then for you long-distance runners out there, it's even more about overall joint strength and power.
Because they're logging so many miles, right? Their bodies go through a lot.
Exactly. So things like core work, hip strengthening, and stability exercises are key for injury prevention and maintaining good form.
That makes sense. It's like you want to be strong enough to handle all those miles without breaking down.
Precisely. It's about building a body that can withstand the demands of your training. And the best part is, you can gain serious strength without turning into a muscle-bound giant.
Okay, good. Because I definitely don't want to be mistaken for a bodybuilder anytime soon.
No worries there.
Yeah.
You're not going to magically transform overnight. It's all about gradual progress and consistency.
This reminds me of something I read about Olympic champion Olga Bondarenko, an incredible long-distance runner. She was known for her intense strength training, we're talking, like squatting more than double her body weight.
Wow, that's impressive.
I know, right? But here's the thing. She stayed incredibly lean and was famous for her endurance.
It just goes to show you that you can be incredibly strong without sacrificing your runner's physique.
It's all about training smarter. Speaking of training smarter, can we talk about the core? I feel like that's a word we hear all the time, but I'm not always sure what it actually means for us runners.
Ah, the core. Yes, it's definitely a buzzword, but for good reason. It's not just about getting that six-pack. It's about having a strong and stable trunk, which includes your back, obliques, pelvic floor muscles, the whole package deal.
So it's more than just those six-pack muscles. What does a strong core actually do for my running?
Think of your core as the powerhouse that connects your upper and lower body. A strong core means efficient power transfer. The force generated by your legs can flow smoothly through your body, propelling you forward with each stride.
So a strong core equals a more powerful stride.
Exactly. Imagine a well-aligned car. All the power from the engine goes straight to the wheels, making for a smoother, more efficient ride. A weak core, on the other hand, is like having bad alignment. You lose energy and power through wasted movement.
Okay, so a weak core is like a car with a wobbly chassis.
Oh.
Not good.
So what are some signs that us runners might need to pay more attention to our core?
Well, you might notice yourself doing a lot of head bobbing, especially when you get tired. All that extra movement, it's just wasted energy.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that. Another common one is flat-footed running, or even overstriding. When your core isn't strong enough to stabilize your pelvis, you end up landing with a thud instead of that nice springy step.
Ouch. Yeah, I can see how that would be a problem.
And then if your core is weak, you might even develop some asymmetry in your stride, like one leg's working harder than the other.
Which can lead to
Exactly. Imbalances, injuries, all sorts of things you don't want.
so many problems from a weak core. I never would have guessed. Now that we're talking about it, I'm starting to think maybe my core is behind some of my running woes.
It's definitely worth considering. And here's another thing you might not expect. Even your arm swing is affected by your core.
Seriously.
Right.
What does my core have to do with my arms swinging?
It's all connected. Your core muscles, especially your obliques, they actually help control the rotation of your upper body. So when they're weak, your arms tend to cross over your body as you run.
That thing.
Messes up your gait, wastes energy, the whole 9 yards.
Wow, it all comes back to the core. Do you have any real life examples of how strengthening the core has actually made a difference for runners?
Oh, absolutely. Let me tell you about this guy, John Gladwin. He was a Commonwealth Games medalist. Crazy fast. But he was constantly sidelined with hamstring injuries.
Oh no, the worst.
Right. So he started working with this brilliant physiotherapist named Peter Stanton, who noticed that Gladwin had really poor pelvic stability. Basically, his core wasn't keeping everything in line.
Okay.
So Stanton put him on this whole program to strengthen his core and improve his pelvic control. Gladwin went an entire year without any hamstring problems.
No way. Just from fixing his core? That's incredible. Oh, okay. I'm convinced I need to start prioritizing my core. But where do I even begin? Is it just endless planks and crunches?
Thankfully, no. There are more effective and definitely more engaging ways to train your core for running, and it all comes back to functional strength training.
Okay, right. Functional strength. Remind me again what's so functional about it.
So functional strength is about training your muscles to work together in a way that directly translates to your running form. It's not just about being strong on like a gym machine. It's about being strong in the specific ways that running demands.
So, doing a million sit-ups on a stable surface won't necessarily translate to a more stable core while I'm actually out there running.
Exactly. Remember how we were talking about the transversus abdominis, that deep abdominal muscle that's so important for core stability?
Yeah, the one we can't see, but it's the real MVP.
Exactly. Well, research has shown that this muscle, it's activated differently during more dynamic movements. That's where tools like medicine balls, Swiss balls, Pilates, those all come in.
Okay, so those aren't just trendy gym equipment after all.
They might be a little trendy, but they've actually been around for ages in athletic training. Medicine balls, for example, have been used for decades to build functional strength.
Really? I had no idea.
And Swiss balls, those were introduced back in the 60s for rehab. The thing is, these tools, they challenge your core in unstable environments, which forces those stabilizing muscles to work overtime.
So it's like training your core to be adaptable, responsive, just like it needs to be out on a run.
Exactly. It's all about building that resilience so you can maintain good form, even when fatigue starts to set in.
This has been so helpful. I feel like I've been missing out on a whole world of strength training that's actually designed for runners, not just for those gym rats.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's
all about working smarter, not harder, right?
Totally. Before we wrap things up, though, can we touch on stretching? Because I feel like that's important too, right?
Absolutely. You can have the strongest core in the world, but if you've got tight muscles, it can sabotage everything.
Really? How so?
Well, tight hip flexors, for instance, they're super common for runners, and they can contribute to that dreaded anterior pelvic tilt.
Anterior pelvic. What now?
Basically, it's when your pelvis tilts forward because of those tight muscles. And tight hamstrings, those are another big one. They can limit your stride and put a ton of extra stress on your lower back.
Ugh, yeah, not good. So it really is all connected.
It is. Your body is this amazing interconnected system. Taking care of it involves addressing all the pieces.
This has been an amazing deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about how strength training can actually help us middle and long distance runners.
It's been my pleasure. Like we've been saying, it's all about working smarter, not harder. And this is just the beginning, really.
Yeah. We've only scratched the surface today. I hope this inspires our listeners to maybe add in some of that targeted strength work to their routine.
Even a little bit can go a long way.
Exactly. Even 10-15 minutes a few times a week can make a huge difference.
Imagine, having a more powerful stride, being more resilient to injuries, and being able to hold that good form even when you're exhausted. That's the power of smarter strength training.
That's an inspiring thought to end on. And on that note, that's it for this deep dive on strength training for middle and long distance runners.
Happy running, everyone.
Until next time.